The signal came from a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. It was weak and primitive, barely strong enough to reach the nearest monitoring station. The Galactic Council had been watching the system for decades. But this was the first time the third planet had sent anything into space that traveled faster than light. Commander Zelith of the Vorthan Empire studied the intercepted transmission on his crystal display. The message was simple and crude, nothing more than basic mathematical sequences and images of bipedal creatures. The beings called themselves humans, and their planet was named Earth. Another primitive species trying to make contact, Zelith muttered to his aide. His crystal body pulsed with mild amusement. Log it with the Council and move on. But the Council had different plans. Within a standard galactic week, representatives from all 12 member species gathered in the great chamber of the Council station. The massive structure floated in neutral space, its biomechanical walls glowing with the soft light of 1,000 different technologies. The Nexari Federation spoke first through their cybernetic ambassador. We have analyzed their broadcast for the past 50 cycles. They are barely past nuclear technology. Their fastest ships use chemical propulsion. They fight amongst themselves constantly. The Zephyrite Hive Queen's mental voice echoed in every mind present. Their thoughts are chaotic and individual. No coordination, no unity. They will be easy to absorb into our collective. Other species nodded in agreement. The slug-like Moravians wanted Earth's water. The energy beings called the Luminous desired the planet's magnetic field. Everyone saw something they could use. High Counselor Vextar, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council millennia ago, called for order. The matter is simple. We offer them the standard choice. Join the Council as a vassal species, provide us with their resources and labor, or face the consequences. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be given one chance to surrender peacefully. The human response came 3 days later. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Council via quantum transmission, her image flickering slightly due to Earth's primitive technology. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and tired eyes, wearing what humans called a business suit. "Thank you for your generous offer," she said, her voice carrying a strange tone that the Council's translators struggled to interpret. "But Earth must respectfully decline. We prefer to remain independent and make our own choices about our future." The Council chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of expansion, no species had ever refused their first offer. Most begged to join. Others tried to negotiate better terms. None had simply said no. Counselor Vextar leaned forward on his floating platform. "Perhaps you do not understand. The Council controls this entire galactic sector. We have technology beyond your comprehension. Our fleets number in the thousands. Resistance is impossible." Sarah Chen smiled, and again the translators seemed confused by the expression. "We understand perfectly, Counselor. Our answer remains no." The transmission ended, leaving the Council staring at empty space. Commander Thalrix of the Nexari Federation laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Amusing. They think their primitive weapons can stand against us. I volunteer to handle this myself." "It should be a simple operation," agreed the Moravian representative, its gelatinous form rippling. "Send a small fleet. Destroy a few cities. They will surrender within hours." Vextar considered this. The Council's reputation was built on swift, overwhelming responses to defiance. Other species watched these encounters carefully. If Earth was allowed to refuse without consequences, it might encourage others to rebel. "Very well. Commander Thalrix, you will take 3 dreadnoughts and 50 support vessels. Demonstrate our power, but leave the planet mostly intact. We still want its resources." Thalrix bowed his mechanical head. "It will be done, High Counselor. I estimate total victory within 1 local day." The fleet assembled at the edge of Earth's solar system 2 weeks later. The ships were magnificent examples of galactic engineering. Each dreadnought was 5 kilometers long, armed with particle cannons that could crack continents and shielded by energy barriers that had never been penetrated. The support vessels carried ground troops, orbital bombers, and communications equipment. As they approached Earth, the fleet's sensors detected the humans' pathetic defenses. A few space stations orbited their planet. Some small colonies existed on their moon. Their largest warships were barely 200 meters long and armed with nuclear missiles. "Look at this," Thalrix told his officers, displaying the scan results. "They have perhaps 50 combat-capable vessels in their entire fleet. Their largest weapon appears to be a fusion bomb. This will be over before it begins. The human fleet moved to intercept them anyway. 50 small ships against 300 council vessels. It was like insects attacking giants. They must be insane, muttered Subcommander Klex, a young Nexari eager for his first victory. No rational species would fight such odds. Primitives rarely act rationally, Thalrix replied. Destroy their fleet, then begin orbital bombardment of their major cities. Use minimum power. We want them to surrender, not die. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. Human ships darted around the massive council dreadnoughts like angry bees, firing their primitive missiles and energy weapons. The attacks barely scratched the council's shields. In response, precise particle beam strikes disabled or destroyed every human vessel. Soon, debris and escape pods floated between the two fleets. The council had not lost a single ship. Broadcasting surrender terms now, reported the communications officer. All human leaders will present themselves for processing. All military personnel will be interned. All industrial facilities will be transferred to council control. Standard occupation protocol. They waited for the response. According to council records, most species surrendered immediately after such a demonstration. The few who did not usually gave up after the first city was destroyed, but Earth remained silent. Perhaps their communications are damaged, suggested Klex. Should we move closer to their planet? Thalrix frowned at his displays. Long-range sensors showed increased activity on Earth's surface. Energy signatures were spiking all over the planet. Military installations that should have been shut down were still operating. They are not surrendering, he realized with surprise. They are preparing to fight. Impossible, said another officer. We just destroyed their entire space force. What can they possibly do against us now? Thalrix studied the tactical display more carefully. Human ground-based weapons were coming online. Missile silos were opening. Aircraft were launching from hidden bases. None of these could threaten ships in orbit, but the activity was troubling. More concerning were the energy readings from Earth's industrial centers. Instead of shutting down, they were increasing production. Whatever the humans were building, they were building it faster than ever. Begin Phase 2, Thalrix ordered. Target their capital cities with low-power bombardment. Make them understand the futility of resistance. The particle beams lanced down from orbit, striking government buildings and military bases in a dozen major cities. The attacks were carefully calibrated to destroy infrastructure, while minimizing casualties. It was a demonstration, not genocide. But instead of the expected pleas for mercy, Earth's response shocked everyone on the Council fleet. Every human military installation on the planet opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of missiles streaked toward orbit. Most were destroyed by the fleet's defensive systems, but their sheer number was staggering. More ships launched from hidden bases that sensors had missed. Energy weapons fired from the planet's surface, their beams too weak to penetrate shields but bright enough to show that humans were not giving up. Sir, the communications officer reported with disbelief in his voice. We are receiving a message from Earth. Sarah Chen appeared on the screen again. But this time she was wearing military clothing and standing in what appeared to be an underground bunker. Behind her, humans in uniform worked frantically at computer terminals. Commander Thalrix, she said, somehow knowing his name. Thank you for the demonstration. We have learned much about your capabilities. Now let us show you ours. The transmission ended and alarms began blaring throughout the Council fleet. The Council fleet had made their first critical mistake, and they did not even know it yet. While their analysts had spent months studying human broadcasts, they had focused on the wrong things. They cataloged human technology, counted their weapons, and measured their industrial capacity. But they dismissed everything else as primitive entertainment. The war movies, the historical documentaries, the news reports of conflicts. All of this was classified as fiction or irrelevant cultural data. The Council species had evolved past warfare centuries ago. They could not imagine that any intelligent species would glorify violence or study it so intensively. They did not understand that humans were different. Dr. James Morrison watched the orbital bombardment from his laboratory deep beneath the Colorado mountains. As Earth's leading expert on alien technology, he had been studying the Council's transmission since first contact. While diplomats tried to negotiate, Morrison and his team worked frantically to understand their visitors. Their shields operate on a rotating frequency pattern, he told General Hayes, who commanded Earth's unified defense forces. The particle beams use focused plasma contained in magnetic bottles. Their ships are incredibly advanced, but they follow predictable patterns. Can we hurt them? Hayes asked bluntly. Morrison pulled up holographic displays showing detailed scans of the Council fleet. Not with conventional weapons, but they have weaknesses. Their technology is so advanced that they rely on automated systems for everything. They are not used to adapting quickly to new threats. This was humanity's first advantage, though they did not know it yet. The Council species had achieved peace through overwhelming technological superiority. Their wars were fought by computers, won through economic pressure, or avoided entirely through diplomacy. They had forgotten how to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Captain Lisa Rodriguez commanded one of the hidden facilities that the Council sensors had missed. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in Earth's outer system, the base contained humanity's most secret project, reverse-engineered alien technology, captured from crashed scout ships over the past decade. All teams, this is Rodriguez, she broadcast on encrypted channels as Council ships moved into occupation positions. Operation Hornet's Nest is now active. Remember, we are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to make them bleed. Across the solar system, similar facilities came online. The Council had detected Earth's obvious military bases and space stations, but they had missed dozens of smaller installations hidden in asteroids, on the dark sides of moons, and in the depths of space itself. The first surprise came when the Council fleet began launching boarding shuttles toward Earth's apparently disabled space stations. The stations had been evacuated, but they were not empty. As alien troops moved through the corridors, they triggered traps that no civilized species would have considered. Explosive charges hidden in the walls, poisonous gas released through life support systems, entire sections designed to collapse and crush invaders. The Council soldiers, expecting to find cowering humans begging for mercy, instead found themselves fighting for their lives in a deadly maze. But the real shock came when humans began fighting back in ways that violated every rule of galactic warfare. Commander Yuki Tanaka had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. She and her crew of 12 loaded their modified cargo ship with every nuclear warhead Earth could spare, then set course for the Council fleet. This is Tanaka to Earth Control, she broadcast as her ship approached the enemy formation. Beginning final approach. See you on the other side. The Council fleet detected the approaching vessel but dismissed it as another futile attack. Their shields could easily absorb anything such a small ship could carry. They did not even bother to destroy it, curious to see what desperate gesture the humans were attempting. They learned too late. Tanaka's ship did not try to penetrate the shields of a dreadnought. Instead, it targeted a supply frigate on the edge of the formation. At the last moment, she detonated every nuclear weapon aboard her vessel simultaneously, creating a fireball that briefly outshone the local sun. The frigate vanished instantly. 2 nearby destroyers were heavily damaged by the explosion. But, more importantly, the psychological effect on the Council fleet was devastating. No species in galactic history had ever used suicide attacks. The concept was so alien to civilized minds that they had no defense against it. The idea that a sentient being would voluntarily sacrifice their life for tactical advantage was incomprehensible. "Sir," reported Sub-Commander Klex, his mechanical voice shaking with something that might have been fear. "The humans destroyed themselves to damage our ship. Why would they do such a thing?" Commander Thalric stared at the expanding debris field where the frigate had been. In 300 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this. "I do not know," he admitted. "Perhaps it was an accident, a malfunction of their primitive technology." But deep down, he knew it was no accident. The attack had been perfectly timed and precisely targeted. The humans had deliberately traded 13 lives for 1 Council ship, and they seemed to consider it a good exchange. This was when the Council began to realize they might have misjudged their enemy. The attacks escalated quickly. Human ships began appearing throughout the solar system, striking without warning and vanishing before the Council could respond. They used tactics that no military academy in the galaxy taught, ramming attacks against ships with damaged shields, suicide bombers hidden inside fake debris fields, captured Council shuttles turned into guided missiles. Even worse, the humans began targeting non-military vessels, something that violated every convention of civilized warfare. "They are savages," declared Counselor Zeppelin during an emergency communication with the fleet. "No rational species fights this way. Finish this quickly before they contaminate the galaxy with their madness." But finishing it quickly was proving impossible. Every time the Council fleet moved to attack a human position, they found traps waiting for them. Every time they tried to establish orbital control, hidden human forces struck from unexpected directions. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine operation. Council ground forces landed near the ruins of New York City to establish a command base. The city had been evacuated after the orbital bombardment, and scans showed no human military presence. The troops found the city eerily quiet. Skyscrapers stood empty, their windows dark. Streets were littered with abandoned vehicles. It seemed like a perfect location for a forward operating base. The first hint of trouble came when the advanced scouts reported finding weapons caches hidden throughout the city. Not military depots, but civilian locations converted into armories. Sporting goods stores filled with explosives. School buildings turned into sniper nests. Even children's playgrounds had been rigged with anti-personnel devices. "These humans are insane," reported Captain Vorth of the Nexari shock troops. "They have turned their own city into a weapon." But the real horror began when human resistance fighters emerged from the subway tunnels, the sewers, and the hidden bunkers beneath every building. They did not wear uniforms or follow military formations. They were ordinary civilians, teachers, shopkeepers, office workers, who had armed themselves and learned to fight. The Council troops were elite soldiers with advanced weapons and armor. In open combat, no human could match them. But this was not open combat. This was urban warfare at its most vicious, and humans had been perfecting it for thousands of years. They fought from the shadows, striking without warning and melting away before retaliation could come. They used the city itself as a weapon, collapsing buildings to trap alien soldiers, flooding tunnels to drown them, even turning the electrical grid into a massive electromagnetic pulse weapon. But what truly shocked the Council forces was the humans' complete disregard for their own lives. Soldiers would trigger building collapses that killed themselves along with their enemies. Civilians would run straight at alien positions carrying satchel charges, detonating them at point-blank range. "They fight like cornered animals," Captain Vorth reported during his final transmission. "But animals with intelligence and planning. We cannot predict their movements because they do not value survival above victory." The transmission ended. When human fighters detonated the explosives they had hidden throughout the building where Vorth had set up his command post. The entire structure collapsed, killing everyone inside. Back on the Council fleet, Commander Thalric studied the casualty reports with growing unease. In 3 days of ground operations, he had lost more soldiers than in his previous 10 campaigns combined. And the humans showed no signs of slowing down. For the first time in his career, Thalrix began to consider the possibility that the Council might have encountered something they could not defeat. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called after the reports from Earth reached the capital. High Counselor Vextar floated before the assembled representatives, his ancient form crackling with barely contained energy. The holographic displays around the chamber showed casualty reports, ship losses, and tactical analyses that painted a disturbing picture. "Commander Thalrix has requested immediate reinforcements," Vextar announced to the shocked assembly. In one standard week of operations, he has lost 12 ships and over 3,000 ground troops. The humans continue to resist with increasing effectiveness. The Zephyrite Hive Queen's mental voice carried undertones of confusion and fear. "This should not be possible. Our projections indicated total victory within days. How can such a primitive species inflict meaningful casualties on our forces?" Admiral Kexron of the Moravian Deep Fleet leaned forward, his gelatinous form rippling with agitation. "The humans are using tactics that violate every convention of civilized warfare. They target supply lines, use suicide attacks, and show no concern for civilian casualties. Our forces are not prepared for such barbarity." Counselor Zeppelin of the Luminous rose from her energy platform, her form blazing brighter with anger. "Then we must demonstrate the cost of defiance more clearly. Send a full sector fleet. Reduce their major cities to ash. make an example that will be remembered for 1,000 years. The vote was swift and unanimous. Earth would face the largest military force the Council had assembled in centuries. 200 ships would be dispatched, including 5 dreadnoughts and the finest troops from all 12 member species. There would be no mercy, no negotiations, and no survivors who could inspire future rebellions. But the Council had made their second critical mistake. They still believed they were fighting a conventional war against a conventional enemy. On Earth, the news of the approaching fleet was received with grim determination rather than despair. General Hayes stood before the United Earth Council in Aidgate, the deep bunkers beneath Geneva, addressing leaders who had set aside every difference to face their common enemy. "They are sending everything they have," Hayes reported, displaying intelligence gathered from captured Council equipment. 200 ships, 50,000 ground troops, enough firepower to crack our planet's crust. President Martinez of the American Federation spoke first. "Our evacuation plans?" "Already in motion," replied Director Chen of Asian Command. "All major cities are being emptied. Critical infrastructure is being moved underground or dispersed. We are becoming a target they cannot effectively hit." Prime Minister Jackson of the European Union leaned forward. "And our counterattack preparations?" Hayes smiled grimly. "Project Prometheus is ahead of schedule. Dr. Morrison's team has successfully reverse-engineered Council shield technology and weapon systems. We have also completed testing on our special delivery methods." The special delivery methods were something no Council species would have imagined. While they prepared for orbital bombardment and ground invasion, humans were preparing to take the war directly to their enemies' homeworlds. Captain Sarah Kim commanded the stealth ship Nemesis, one of 12 vessels built using a combination of human engineering and captured alien technology. The ships were designed for one purpose: to penetrate Council space undetected and strike targets that the aliens considered untouchable. "Final systems check complete," reported her navigation officer as they prepared to enter hyperspace. "Course plotted for the Vorthen home system. Estimated travel time, 6 days. Remember the mission parameters," Kim told her crew of volunteers. "We are not trying to conquer anything. We are trying to send a message, hit the orbital shipyards, destroy what we can, and get out. Show them that nowhere is safe." Similar ships were launching for 11 other Council worlds, each carrying human special forces trained in tactics that galactic civilization had never encountered. While the Council fleet moved toward Earth, humanity was about to demonstrate that they could strike anywhere in the galaxy. The first indication that something had changed came when the Council's reinforcement fleet arrived at Earth. Admiral Korthvan, the Nexari Supreme Commander, expected to find Thalrix in control of a broken planet. Instead, he found his subordinates' fleet scattered across the outer solar system, still fighting a guerrilla war against an enemy that refused to be pinned down. "Report," Korthvan demanded, as his flagship joined the embattled formation. Thalrix appeared on the communication screen, his usually pristine mechanical features scorched and damaged. "Admiral, the situation is unprecedented. The humans have abandoned conventional defensive strategies. They are fighting from hidden bases throughout the system. We cannot establish orbital control because they keep striking our support vessels." As if summoned by his words, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the fleet. A human attack group had appeared from behind one of the system's outer moons, launching missiles at the newly arrived supply ships. "Destroy them," Korthvan ordered. The Council ships moved to intercept, but the human vessels had already vanished back into the asteroid field where their larger ships could not follow. It was the same pattern that had been repeating for weeks: hit and run attacks that slowly bled the Council fleet while avoiding decisive battles. "They are cowards," declared General Vexton of the Moravian Assault Corps. "They refuse to face us honorably." But Admiral Korthvan was beginning to understand that honor had nothing to do with it. The humans were fighting to win, not to prove their courage. Every engagement was calculated to maximize damage to Council forces, while minimizing their own losses. It was warfare stripped down to its most ruthless essence. The real shock came 3 days later, when urgent communications began arriving from across Council space. The first report came from the Vorthon homeworld. "This is Defense Commander Zeltoth. The desperate transmission began. "We are under attack by unknown human forces. They appeared without warning and are targeting our orbital infrastructure. Our planetary shields are holding, but they have destroyed 6 shipyards and are systematically eliminating our deep space monitoring stations." Similar reports flooded in from 11 other worlds. Humans had somehow traveled across the galaxy and were striking at the heart of Council civilization. The attacks were perfectly coordinated, hitting critical infrastructure while avoiding heavily defended military targets. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. For the first time in their history, Council worlds faced enemy action on their own soil. Panic spread through the civilian populations who had never imagined that war could reach them. "How is this possible?" demanded Councillor Zephlin during an emergency session. "Our intelligence reports indicated that humans lack faster-than-light travel capability." The answer came from intercepted human communications. Dr. Morrison's team had not only reverse-engineered Council technology, they had improved upon it. Human ships were now faster and more maneuverable than anything in the Council fleet. But the humans' greatest advantage was not technological. It was psychological. They fought without the constraints that bound civilized species. When Council defenders expected them to target military installations, they hit civilian infrastructure. When protocols called for them to avoid populated areas, they struck at the heart of major cities. The breaking point came when human forces successfully captured a Council command vessel. The attack was so audacious that Council analysts initially refused to believe the reports. The heavy cruiser Dominance was patrolling the edge of the Earth system when its sensors detected what appeared to be a disabled human transport drifting in space. Following standard protocols, the ship moved to investigate, expecting to capture valuable prisoners or intelligence. The transport was not disabled. It was bait. As the Council ship extended its docking tube to board the apparently helpless vessel, human soldiers emerged from hidden compartments throughout the transport's hull. They had been waiting in the vacuum of space, wearing primitive spacesuits and carrying magnetic charges. The boarding action that followed violated every principle of galactic warfare. Humans fought through the ship's corridors using tactics that no civilized military academy taught. They took no prisoners, showed no mercy, and demonstrated a willingness to die that terrified their enemies. Within 2 hours, the Dominance was under human control. The crew was dead, the computer systems had been stripped of all intelligence, and the ship itself was being prepared for transport back to Earth. "They boarded us through open space," reported, the ship's final transmission before communications were cut. "No species has ever attempted such a tactic. They fight like demons, without regard for their own survival." The loss of an entire Council warship to primitive boarding tactics sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Independent worlds began declaring neutrality, unwilling to risk drawing human attention. Some even began secretly negotiating with Earth, hoping to avoid the fate of the Council worlds. Admiral Korthvon stared at the tactical displays showing human forces scattered throughout the galaxy, striking wherever they pleased. His superior fleet was still stuck in one star system, fighting an enemy that refused to stand still long enough to be destroyed. For the first time in galactic history, a species had taken the offensive against the Council and was winning. The war changed forever when Captain Sarah Kim's strike force reached the Vorthon homeworld. The crystalline beings had ruled their sector of space for over 2 millennia, their technology so advanced that they considered themselves nearly godlike. Their planet was a wonder of engineering, with floating crystal cities and orbital rings that captured the energy of their sun. But the Vorthons had never faced an enemy willing to attack civilian targets. "Target the power distribution nodes," Kim ordered as her small fleet approached the planet's outer defenses. "Remember, we are not here to conquer. We are here to break their will to fight." The Nemesis and her sister ships moved through space like ghosts, their stolen stealth technology making them nearly invisible to Council sensors. The few defensive platforms that detected them found their targeting systems confused by human, electronic warfare techniques that the galaxy had never seen. The first target was the orbital solar collection array that powered half the planet. Instead of engaging the heavily defended control station, the human ships targeted the transmission cables themselves. Concentrated laser fire severed the connections, plunging billions of Vorthons into darkness. The psychological impact was immediate. The crystal beings had never experienced powerlessness. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that their technology made them invulnerable. But humans had found the weak points that the Vorthons never thought to defend. "This is impossible," transmitted Defense Commander Zeltoth as his forces scrambled to respond. "Our shields should have prevented any approach. How did they penetrate our defenses?" The answer was simple. Humans did not fight the way civilized species fought. Instead of trying to overwhelm the shields with superior firepower, they had found ways around them. Small strike teams had hidden in the debris fields around the planet's moons, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Others had disguised their ships as asteroids, drifting for weeks through the outer system until they could reach their targets. But the real terror began when human special forces teams materialized inside the crystal cities themselves. Sergeant Marcus Torres led one of 12 infiltration teams that had been inserted into the planet's atmosphere using modified escape pods. The technology should not have worked. The Vorthon defense grid was designed to detect and destroy any unauthorized entry. But humans had learned to use the Vorthon's own technology against them. By mimicking the energy signatures of the crystal being's own transport pods, the human infiltrators had slipped through defenses that had never been breached. "Alpha team in position," Torres reported as his squad moved through the gleaming streets of the capital city. The crystal buildings around them pulsed with soft light, creating a beauty that would have been breathtaking under other circumstances. But the humans were not tourists. "Remember the target list," Torres told his team. "Communications hubs, transportation nodes, and government buildings. We hit them fast and hard, then extract before they can coordinate a response." The attacks began simultaneously across the planet's surface. Human demolition experts, using tactics learned in countless urban conflicts on Earth, brought down bridges, severed communication lines, and destroyed power substations. The Vorthons, who had never faced guerrilla warfare, found themselves helpless against an enemy that struck from the shadows. The most devastating blow came when Torres's team successfully infiltrated the Planetary Defense Command Center. The building was protected by energy barriers that could stop starship weapons, but the humans did not try to break through them. Instead, they simply walked up to the main entrance and asked for asylum. The Vorthon guards, following protocols designed for dealing with refugees from other species, brought the humans inside for processing. It was the last mistake they would ever make. The human soldiers had concealed enough explosives in their equipment to level a city block. When they detonated the charges, the resulting explosion not only destroyed the command center but sent shockwaves through the crystal substrate of the entire city. Buildings that had stood for centuries cracked and fell as their harmonic frequencies were disrupted. Similar scenes played out across 11 other council worlds. Human strike teams appeared without warning, struck at the heart of civilized society, and vanished before effective resistance could be organized. They targeted everything that the galaxy's advanced species took for granted: power grids, communication networks, transportation systems, and government buildings. But more importantly, they broke something fundamental in the galactic psyche. For the first time in millennia, the advanced species of the Council realized they were not invincible. The Zephyrate hive world suffered perhaps the worst attacks. The insectoid species relied on psychic coordination between their queens to maintain their vast civilization. Human forces, somehow immune to psychic influence, began systematically hunting the Queen Castes. General Lisa Rodriguez, now commanding Earth Special Operations, personally led the assault on the primary hive world. Her team had spent months studying Zephyrite biology and tactics, learning how to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. "The queens communicate through quantum entanglement," she explained to her strike team as they prepared for insertion. "If we can disrupt that connection, their entire hive structure will collapse into chaos." The mission was surgical in its precision. Human teams infiltrated the breeding chambers deep beneath the planet's surface, using routes that only worker drones were supposed to know. They planted quantum disruptor devices at key nodes in the hive's communication network, then triggered them simultaneously. The effect was catastrophic. Across the planet, Zephyrite drones suddenly found themselves cut off from the collective consciousness that had guided them for their entire lives. They wandered aimlessly, unable to coordinate or function without constant mental direction from their queens. Within hours, the most organized society in the galaxy had devolved into complete anarchy. But the humans were not finished. As Zephyrite civilization collapsed around them, Rodriguez's teams began the next phase of their operation, capturing queens for interrogation and removing key technology for transport back to Earth. "This is barbaric," transmitted Queen Zexila during her final communication before capture. "No civilized species would attack non-combatants." "You are worse than animals." Rodriguez smiled grimly as she watched Zephyrite workers stumbling through their ruined cities. "No, Your Majesty. We are human, and that is something you should have understood before you tried to make us your slaves." The psychological warfare was just as important as the physical attacks. Humans had learned that the Council species were not prepared for an enemy that ignored all conventions of civilized warfare. They expected negotiations, formal declarations of war, and battles fought according to established protocols. Instead, they got terror. Captain James Fletcher commanded the stealth ship Retribution as it approached the Nexari homeworld. The cybernetic beings had built their society around perfect efficiency and logical planning. They calculated odds, managed resources, and made decisions based on careful analysis of all available data, but they had never tried to calculate the behavior of a species that seemed determined to prove that no one was safe. "Target acquired," reported Fletcher's weapons officer as they closed. On the planet's primary data storage facility, the massive structure contained the accumulated knowledge of the Nexari civilization, scientific discoveries, historical records, and the backup personalities of billions of cybernetic citizens. "One shot, maximum yield," Fletcher ordered. "Send them a message they will never forget." The lance of coherent energy that struck the data facility was based on improved Council technology, but the targeting strategy was purely human. Instead of trying to destroy the entire structure, the beam was precisely calibrated to trigger a cascade failure in the quantum storage matrices. The explosion that followed could be seen from orbit. Centuries of Nexari civilization vanished in a microsecond as the quantum storage collapsed into a localized black hole. The structure was completely vaporized, taking with it the stored consciousness of over 1 billion beings. But the real impact was on the surviving Nexari. For the first time in their history, they faced the possibility of true death. Their backup systems were gone. Their accumulated knowledge was lost. They were suddenly terrifyingly mortal. Similar attacks struck at the heart of every Council species. The slug-like Moravians found their water processing facilities poisoned with compounds that made their home oceans uninhabitable. The energy beings called the Luminous discovered that humans could disrupt their quantum matrices, forcing them into solid form where they could be killed like any other creature. Each attack was carefully designed to target what each species valued most. The Vorthans lost their crystal cities. The Zephyrite lost their collective consciousness. The Nexari lost their immortality. The psychological impact was far greater than the physical damage. Within weeks, the galactic community was in chaos. Trade routes shut down as merchant ships refused to travel without massive military escorts. Planetary governments declared martial law as their populations demanded protection from the human terror. Independi. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in desperation. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, the ruling species of the galaxy faced an enemy they could not defeat. The great chamber of the Council station was filled with representatives whose worlds burned, whose populations fled in terror, and whose mighty fleets had been reduced to scattered remnants hiding in deep space. High Counselor Vextar floated before the assembly, his ancient form dimmed by exhaustion and fear. Around him, holographic displays showed the true scope of the disaster. 47 major worlds had been attacked. Hundreds of installations had been destroyed. The galactic economy was in complete collapse as trade routes shut down, and entire sectors went dark. "The situation reports continue to arrive," Vextar announced to the shocked assembly. "The humans have simultaneously struck targets across 12 different sectors. Our fleets cannot protect everything, and they seem to know exactly where we are weakest." Admiral Korthvan of the Nexari Federation struggled to maintain his composure as he delivered his report. Half of his cybernetic components had been damaged during the fighting at Earth, and replacement parts were no longer available due to the attacks on manufacturing centers. "Our military analysis indicates that we are facing a completely new form of warfare," he admitted, the words tasting bitter even through his mechanical voice. The humans do not fight to control territory or capture resources. They fight to break our will to resist. Every attack is designed to cause maximum psychological impact. Counselor Zeppelin of the Luminous blazed brighter with barely contained rage. Then we must respond in kind. Destroy their homeworld. Show them that defiance leads only to extinction. But the terrible truth was that they no longer could. Admiral Korthvan's fleet, reduced to fewer than 60 ships, was still trapped in the Earth system fighting a war they could not win. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a fortress, with hidden bases on every asteroid and defensive installations built into the fabric of space itself. Worse, human technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed. Their ships were faster, their weapons more effective, and their tactics completely unpredictable. In 6 months of warfare, they had gone from primitive savages to the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. Perhaps, suggested the Moravian representative, his gelatinous form quivering with fear, we should consider negotiation. The humans must want something we can provide. The suggestion was met with horrified silence. The Council had never negotiated with inferiors. Their entire system of government was based on the assumption that advanced species naturally ruled over primitive ones. To treat humans as equals would undermine the foundation of galactic civilization, but they were running out of options. The debate was interrupted by proximity alarms throughout the station. Council guards rushed to their positions as sensors detected incoming ships. But the alerts made no sense. According to the readings, the vessels were appearing inside the station's defensive perimeter, bypassing shields and detection systems that had never been penetrated. This is impossible, declared the station commander. Nothing can reach us here. We are in neutral space, protected by treaties older than most civilizations. The answer came when human soldiers began materializing in the council chamber itself. They appeared in flashes of blue light, using teleportation technology that the council had only theorized about. The guards moved to stop them, but found themselves facing weapons that their armor could not deflect and tactics their training had never covered. The fighting was brief and one-sided. Within minutes, the most secure location in the galaxy was under human control. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked into the chamber as if she owned it, flanked by soldiers whose weapons remained trained on the cowering council representatives. She had changed since her first appearance before the council. The tired diplomat had been replaced by someone harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous. "Honorable counselors," she said, her voice carrying an irony that the translation systems struggled to convey. "Thank you for gathering here today. It saves us the trouble of hunting you down individually." High Counselor Vextar tried to maintain some dignity as he faced his captors. "This is an act of war against neutral territory. The treaties were broken when you attacked Earth," Chen interrupted. "You declared war on us, remember? We are simply fighting it more effectively than you expected." Behind her, General Hayes entered the chamber carrying a device that made every council member recoil in terror. It was a quantum disruptor of human design, capable of tearing apart the fundamental structure of matter itself. In the hands of a species willing to use suicide attacks, such a weapon represented an existential threat to everyone in the room. "Let me explain your situation," Chen continued, moving to the center of the chamber like a teacher addressing unruly students. "Your fleets are scattered and broken. Your homeworlds are under constant attack. Your economy has collapsed, and your people are demanding protection you cannot provide." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of council space. Red markers indicated human attacks, yellow showed areas of civil unrest, and green represented the few remaining strongholds where council authority still held. There was very little green left. "You have 2 choices," Chen announced. "You can continue this war and watch your civilization burn, or you can accept our terms for ending it." "Terms?" spat Counselor Zeppelin. "You are primitives, savages. We do not negotiate with animals." General Hayes smiled grimly and adjusted the settings on his weapon. "Would you like us to demonstrate just how primitive we can be?" The threat was clear. One human with one weapon could kill everyone in the chamber, and they all knew it. More importantly, they knew that humans were crazy enough to do it. Chen raised her hand, stopping Hayes from taking action. "Let me be clear about what we are offering. Earth will accept recognition as an independent power with full rights in the galactic community. All attacks on human territory will cease immediately. Reparations will be paid for the damage to our homeworld and the loss of life in your unprovoked attack. The demands were outrageous by council standards, but the representatives could see they had no choice but to listen. Furthermore, Chen continued, the council system will be reformed. No species will be forced into vassalage. All civilizations will have the right to determine their own futures. A new galactic charter will be established with human participation. And if we refuse? Asked Vextar, though he already knew the answer. Then we continue the war until your governments collapse and your species learn to behave, Chen replied matter-of-factly. We have already demonstrated that we can strike anywhere, anytime. Your technology cannot stop us, your fleets cannot catch us, and your people cannot hide from us. She gestured to another display showing human ships throughout council space. Even as we speak, our forces are in position to destroy every major installation in your territories. Not just military targets, everything. Power plants, hospitals, schools, farms. We will reduce you to pre-industrial conditions if necessary. The horror of the threat was not that humans might destroy council civilization, but that they clearly would. The species that had once seemed too primitive to notice had become the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever known. The vote was unanimous, though it took 3 hours of desperate debate. The Council formally recognized Earth as an independent power and agreed to all human demands. The new galactic charter was signed in human blood, literally, as Chen insisted on using a traditional Earth custom that horrified the alien representatives. But the real shock came in the final terms of the agreement. Earth would not be content to simply defend itself. They demanded the right to share their technology with other species, to establish trade relationships with independent worlds, and to intervene if any government tried to force vassalage on unwilling populations. In effect, humans had appointed themselves the protectors of the weak and the enemies of tyranny throughout the galaxy. You have made a terrible mistake, Vextar warned as the agreements were signed. You cannot police an entire galaxy. The responsibility will destroy you. Sarah Chen smiled, and for the first time the expression seemed genuinely warm. Counselor, you still do not understand what you are dealing with. We are not trying to rule the galaxy. We are trying to free it. As the human delegation prepared to leave the station, Chen paused at the chamber entrance. Oh, and one more thing. Any species that wants our protection just has to ask. Our technology will be freely shared with anyone who needs it to defend themselves. The implication was clear. The age of council dominance was over. In its place would come something the galaxy had never seen, a protector that asked nothing in return except the right for all species to choose their own destiny. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had liberated it, and that shocked the council most of all.